Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randle. Kevin is a retired United States Army Lieutenant Colonel who has studied UFOs for more than 50 years. His military training has provided him with unique insight into military operations and UFO research. Kevin has investigated many of the most mysterious cases and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries and been interviewed on hundreds of radio and television programs about UFOs. Considered to be one of the leading experts on the Roswell UFO crash, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including Roswell in the 21st Century and Encounter in the Desert, a re-examination of the Socorro UFO landing. Now here's the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randle.
And welcome. This is A Different Perspective. I am Kevin Randle. Before I am joined by my guest, Nick Redfern, got a couple of comments I wanted to make. As you remember, we talked to Mike Rogers of the Walton abduction last week. By coincidence, yesterday, I saw the movie Fire in the Sky, which is the fictional account of the Walton abduction. And I was struck by a couple of things in it, and I actually have communicated with Mike Rogers about this. One of them was the conflict between Travis Walton and Alan Dallas, and I didn't remember that coming up before. So I asked Mike Rogers about it because of the way it was presented in the movie, and Mike Rogers told me it was even worse in real life. They had toned it down for the movie, and some of the things that had happened were not shown in the movie. And I was kind of surprised about that. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is there's this sequence at the end of the film in which Travis is remembering his experiences aboard the craft. Largely fiction. Most of it didn't happen. And in fact, from what Mike Rogers said, that when he mapped out the timeline of what Travis remembered of those days he was missing, it worked out to about 15 minutes of consciousness. So there's some discrepancy there. But, you know, you have to think about it. This is a movie, and they do that sort of thing. And the one thing that struck me, and probably erroneously, was that the conflict between Travis and Alan Dallas was reminiscent of a conflict that was aboard the Andrea Gale in A Perfect Storm between two of the crewmen. It just like it's a Hollywood device for creating conflict. The second thing I thought I'd chat with is more on a personal nature, and I think Nick Redfern might be able to help me out with some of this. On a lark, I signed up to get a DNA test. I thought it would be a lot of fun, find out what my ethnic background is. Came back on Saturday, 50% English in the Midlands area. The Pottery, I think is what it was called. I think the Pottery is part of the Midlands area. 17%.
Yeah, that's right, Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Nick. 13% Irish Scottish. 32% German, at least 5%. I thought, well, we'll get some nice ethnicity in there. Nope. 2% Norwegian, 3% British. Swedish. I am the whitest person you're going to hear on the radio today, I bet. Nothing of a ethnic background. I mean, according to the stories that came out after Elizabeth Warren had released her DNA results and had a smidgen of native blood, it was said the average American had more of that in them than Elizabeth Warren did. Well, turns out I'm not average, I guess. I am basically the whitest person you're going to hear from today. Anyway, with that said, and if Nick wants to comment on my English heritage, he's certainly welcome to do so. I am joined by Nick Redfern, who is a journalist, cryptozoologist, ufologist, and I nearly said urologist, because the words look alike, I guess, and best-selling author of a number of books on conspiracies and unexplained mysteries, including Visible Ink Press's Area 51, Revealing the Truth of UFOs, and the recently published, and I have a book in my hand, The Alien Book, A Guide to Extraterrestrial Beings on Earth. He is a full-time author and has appeared on more than 70 radio TV shows exploring the conspiracies and unexplained. He is a frequent guest on radio programs and UFO symposiums. He's a frequent guest here. And the reason I kind of chuckled there was because as I read that, I realized I've actually hosted over 200 radio shows when you talk about a different perspective, and the one I did in El Paso, Texas, called the Randle Report. Nick Redfern, I've used up 5 minutes of our time, but welcome to A Different Perspective.
Hey, Kevin, how's it going?
Not well. So the Potteries is part of the Midlands, which I guess is northwest of London.
Yeah, the best sort of area to look at for the Midlands that's big on a map would be the city of Birmingham. And Birmingham, central England, in the West Midlands. And I grew up about 10 miles from the city of Birmingham. So just look on Birmingham on the map, and that entire area is classed as the Midlands.
So you grew up in the area then?
Yes, I did. I was born and bred in the Midlands, and when I was about sort of 19, something like that, I moved down to a coastal area, part of England, and moved around quite a bit after that. But yeah, as a teenager, up until my teenagers, yeah, I lived in the Midlands, and my family's still there now.
I actually apparently still have relatives there as well. I did not know that until Saturday. Anyway, I'm sure that people, well, you were going to say?
No, I was just going to say I got family there. My father's still there, and I've got cousins there. So, I've still got slight ties to the UK.
Well, I have more ties to the UK than I thought, so there you go. The Alien Book, which I have a copy of here, kindly sent to me by Visible Ink. What's the thrust of this book?
Well, basically, the publisher, I've done 9 or 10 books with Visible Ink, and they contacted me out the blue, as they often do, and said, we're interested in having someone doing a kind of like encyclopedic A to Z book on aliens, and that's how a lot of their, not all of them, but a lot of VIP's books are put together like that, sort of A to Z type encyclopedias. And so they said, would you be interested in doing it? And I thought about it, and I thought, well, providing I can sort of, look at not just the well-known cases, but the sort of fairly unknown ones as well. And, I was more concerned that they were just wanting me to splash over the net, the same old ones and whatever. But fortunately, they said, no, just go with whatever you want. If they're obscure or well-known, it doesn't matter. We just want a book that's, can demonstrate to people all the alleged different types of aliens that have been seen. So in that sense, it worked well.
But you have a chapter about the Loch Ness Monster. Is Nessie an alien?
Yes. Well, that depends on your own perspective. I mean, I don't... The book isn't sort of much written from the perspective that this is Nick Redfern's theory or this is Nick Redfern's conclusion. I've written it from the perspective, in many cases, of the witnesses and what they thought. And the fact is, one of the little-known facts is that there have been a lot of UFO sightings at Loch Ness, which, it sounds kind of really bizarre because, Loch Ness, Scotland is known mainly for the stories of the Loch Ness monsters, not anything to do with aliens. But not only have there been UFO sightings over Loch Ness, but back in the early 1970s, one of the early 1960s, 70s era researchers, a guy named Ted Holliday, actually had an encounter on the shores of Loch Ness with nothing less than a man in black. So, you do have a few weird aspects about this story. And a lot of these UFO cases revolving around the Loch Ness Monster occurred in the 1970s. And as a result of this, the BBC's Doctor Who series actually had one particular season that was based on these UFO encounters, and they blended it into a story of aliens and monsters at Loch Ness.
Well, I mean, Doctor Who isn't exactly a documentary, though.
No, it's not, to say the very least. But it was interesting that they based that particular story around the fact that there had been significant UFO sightings at Loch Ness. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean anything at all, because, just because a UFO happens to be seen where something else weird happened to be seen doesn't necessarily mean we have to make a connection. I think at the very most, we can say that it's an interesting, odd little coincidence. Or if you're at the other end of the scenario, you view it that Nessie is some sort of alien creature. But, again, it depends on the person's, I guess, their own opinion on it, really. So.
Well, it brings up a couple of questions in my mind, which we'll have to get to in just a moment. But the first and foremost is, what was your favorite Doctor Who episode? And second of all, there was a study just released by a bunch of biologists or zoologists or cryptozoologists or somebody who had studied the DNA makeup of Loch Ness and determined that the Loch Ness Monster was probably, a giant eel, I think it was. I think I just read that like 2 or 3 weeks ago, so that's something that's pretty new. But we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that just a moment, because I have to take a break. We're coming up hard against the break, and I used up a lot of our time earlier on. Take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, and I'll have some more information there about what's going on with Nick's book and some other information that'll be exciting about that. And if you get a chance, take a look at Roswell in the 21st century. We will be back right after this, so please stick around.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shamans worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Path Home Shamanic Art School proudly presents the Gathering of Shaman 2019 Fall Retreat, Manifestation Samhain. Join me, certified shamanic instructor Gwilda Wiyaka, in the magnificent Colorado Mountains this November 2nd and 3rd for a life-changing event. Participate in unique teachings and ceremonies that'll put the power and magic of shamanic manifestation into your hands. Sit in circle with like-minded individuals, sharing group energy and the power it generates. Classes will be held in a facility next to the beautiful, majestic Arkansas River, further empowering the experience. Space is limited, so reserve your spot today. For more information, visit findyourpathhome.com or email touchin@findyourpathhome.com.
I'm joined by Nick Redfern. We're talking about his latest, The Alien Book, A Guide to Extraterrestrial Beings on Earth. We were immersed in the Loch Ness Monster, I guess. And I'd mentioned the study that suggested the DNA of the lake suggested that the Loch Ness Monster was some kind of a giant eel. And I know that information wasn't available when you wrote the book, Nick. But what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, it's actually not a new story. I mean, you can go back to a lot of the early books on the Loch Ness Monster, even going back to the 40s and 50s, where the idea of something like a giant eel could have been the theory. Now, the big difference is that this is the first time that a DNA analysis of just about everything that lives in Loch Ness has been studied. The downside is that DNA can certainly determine, something from like an eel versus an otter or something like that, which are the theories that have been put forward. But DNA doesn't give you any indication as to the size of the creature, just what it is. And, I mean, you can go to the shores of Loch Ness and sort of paddle in the waters, out to about 3 or 4 feet, and you'll see a lot of eels. So there's nothing strange about eels being in Loch Ness. You can see them all the time. But what we don't have is evidence that there are like 20-foot long eels in Loch Ness, which would be amazing if there are. And it could be the answer. But right now, all we know is that there are eels in Loch Ness, which is something we've known for decades. So.
Well, I was thinking as you were talking there that a 20-foot eel, if there were 20-foot eels in Loch Ness that's responsible for the sightings, that in all the research that's been done in Loch Ness, that they would have come up with something like that. I mean, some definitive proof rather than a DNA analysis of the lake water. So it just seems a little far-fetched.
Well, I mean, it's difficult to sort of say anything. Like I said, I mean, everybody knows if you go there, you see eels all the time. So that's not an issue. It's the size. Now, there certainly aren't any solid records of eels growing to the lengths of like 20, 30 feet. But if it was proved, I mean, I don't think most people would have a problem saying, these are monsters, something like a 25-foot eel charging towards you through the water. That's pretty monstrous. But, it is one of these situations where I think the media, I won't say they overplayed it, but I think the media actually didn't realize that the eel theory had been around for decades, and there've been books on it as well. But as I said, the important aspect is the fact that they're looking at it now from the DNA angle and just kind of tagging just about everything that's in the log.
So you're suggesting that the news media may have taken a superficial look at this report and run with it without understanding it in depth?
Golly, I mean, surely the media would never do something like that, surely.
I'm glad you picked up the sarcasm there.
Yeah, oh, yes.
And before I forget, were you a fan of Doctor Who?
No, I'm not really a big fan of science fiction. I like horror stuff, but I've never actually, I don't think I've seen a Doctor Who episode since I was probably 5 or 6. I've never seen any of the new ones or whatever.
Well, just for the record, the best Doctor Who's were John Pertwee and Tom Baker. Just for the record there.
Oh, no, I vaguely remember both of them. I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 when I think John Pertwee was in Doctor Who. So.
Yeah, they had the best looking assistants, I think, too. So
there you go, yeah.
And now I'm going to be labeled as a misogynist. There we go. Right down in the toilet here already. Moving right along, you do some things with the Flatwoods Monster that was kind of interesting. Can you give us a quick background of what the Flatwoods Monster case is? I've referenced it a couple of times on the program, but I've never really gone into any kind of depth about it. So, the thumbnail sketch of it would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, the Flatwoods Monster is an interesting story, and it goes back to September 1952, September the 12th, and a small town in West Virginia called Flatwoods, hence the term Flatwoods Monster. And it was in the evening, sort of late afternoon, early evening, when a strange object was seen soaring over the skies, and it was believed that the object had come down. Part of the story kind of parallels a little bit the Kecksburg story from Pennsylvania in 1965 of people seeing this illuminated object sort of soaring across the landscape and then falling down over the horizon. And a group of boys, teenagers, and a school teacher went in search of whatever this thing was. And they claimed to have seen this huge 12-foot tall, vaguely humanoid type creature with glowing red eyes, but which seemed to have almost like robotic aspects to it as well. And Frank Frascino has written a very good book on this, and which was updated into another version as well. And what's interesting about the Flatwoods Monster is that we really haven't ever seen anything quite like it since. As I said, it had these glowing red eyes, which are kind of similar to Mothman. And Mothman, was also seen in West Virginia, which is interesting. But this thing, 12 feet tall, which seemed to glide rather than walk, and it didn't seem to have legs. It was almost like, in a strange way, it was like a cone, like an inverted cone, like an ice cream cone, angled towards the ground. So it's very strange and giving off these sparks and lights and flashes and quite understandably, given that most of them were young kids, they didn't stay around. They fled the area. But at the time, it got a lot of coverage, and you can find a few little snippets about it in the Blue Book files at the National Archives. And it's one of those kind of here 1 minute, gone the next minute, and also mixed in with a bit of, of something that was just totally singular. It was never sort of parallel by something else,
Wasn't there physical evidence found on the hilltop?
Well, yeah, there was. There were reports of burnings on trees and strange prints and that kind of thing. But nothing that was actually confirmed as something that might be, definitively extraterrestrial or anything like that.
Well, the one thing that's always struck me is there was one of the guys, his last name was Lemon, and I forget his first name at the moment, who was always identified as a National Guardsman, as if this gives him some kind of extra credibility. He was 17 years old, and I think he hadn't even been to basic training yet. But in an attempt to give some credibility to the teenagers, they always mentioned his National Guard Association. So I always found that interesting. But didn't they describe the creature as having like an Ace of Spades type of head arrangement or something like that?
Yeah, it had sort of like a humanoid type head with glowing eyes, but behind it, it was almost like an arc behind the head, but that was fashioned in the form of an Ace of Spades. So that was like a striking, noticeable thing that you don't really see in any other cases that I'm aware of, at least.
But you kind of tied this to some of the British military's attempts at deception or psychological warfare during the Second World War, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually got this. I mean, this is interesting because it's not hearsay or friend of a friend stuff. It's actually detailed in a RAND document that you can find online as a PDF titled The Exploitation of Superstitions for Purposes of Psychological Warfare, written by a woman named Jean M. Hungerford. And it talks in there about a project that the British Army supposedly had in the Second World War to create, and I'm quoting right now from the documents, a gigantic scarecrow about 12 feet high, able to stagger forward under its own power and emit frightful flashes and bangs. And the plan was to unleash this into some of the remote Italian villages to try and determine how, if you like, psychological warfare could be used in regular warfare. Now, in many respects, even I have to admit, the idea of the British Army creating a 12-foot glowing, fiery robot-type scarecrow, trundling through the streets of a little Italian village, that sounds even more bizarre than the accepted story of the Flatwoods Monster. But the fact is, this is the documentation or the story behind it came from the mid-40s, and Jean Hungerford's paper for RAND was published in 1950, and it was just 2 years after this that suddenly something eerily similar to what the British military was working on pops up in the RAND documents, just 2 years, as I said, before the Flatwoods Monster appeared. So in that sense, you're looking at something that is either an incredible coincidence or there's more to it,
Well, we're going to have to take our next break here, so we'll get back to this. We'll talk a little bit more about this. The paper, I'm going to put a link up on my blog, www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, so those of you who'd like to read the paper in its entirety, and it's not that long of a paper, you can take a look at it. A link to it there. Just click on the link, I guess. Also, I should always point out that Encounters in the Deserts is a very nice book if you all want to take a look at it. And don't forget the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, and take a look at the various programs aligned on the network. And I'm sure there'll be something that'll be very interesting. We will be back right after this with Nick Redfern.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
I am here with Nick Redfern. We're talking about his book, The Alien Book, A Guide to Extraterrestrial Beings on Earth. We were talking about the Flatwoods Monster and British attempts at psychological warfare. He quoted a paper that we'll put up online here. I'll link it on my blog about psychological warfare. But the thing that bothered me about this, she is quoting a guy named, Maskelyne?
Yeah, Joseph Maskelyne, he was a very controversial character. And so it's difficult to know for sure, how far he exaggerated the story of the British Army using this bizarre scarecrow technology, or, was it the literal truth? Now, even if he exaggerated it, we've still got a very bizarre coincidence, because even if he created the story or, he exaggerated it, what he described is actually almost, to a T, it's almost, like the Flatwoods Monster. So, again, you're dealing with something that is still a bizarre coincidence if he happened to exaggerate it in the first place.
Well, I found stuff that suggested he was either brilliant at camouflage and did really well at that, or he was an entertainer of the troops, performing magic.
Well, yeah, he actually was a very skilled magician. That was actually his job before he got involved with British intelligence, and he created like a lot of faked things to sort of confuse the Nazis, like creating fake tanks, which were actually blow-ups, designed to look like real tanks and things like this, to make it look like the military had got more tanks in one area than they actually had,
What we call those inflatable tanks.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's the whole story. When you bring Maskelyne into the story, Jasper Maskelyne, the whole thing is just very, very weird. Now, I do think there's still something to this, even if he exaggerated it. The fact is, you've got the flashing lights. The sort of bright eyes, the 12-foot height, and using them specifically in little villages in Italy, and of course Flatwoods is a little town in West Virginia. So there are a lot of definite, parallels, and issues tend to mirror each other in this story somehow.
Yeah, but it could also be coincidence. And you remember there was a book, was it called The Titan, which was about a ship that sailed from Liverpool and hit an iceberg and sank, right. And great loss of life. And it mirrored quite a bit of the actual events of the Titanic. 20 years later, 15 years later. So, I mean, here's a book that kind of predicted the sinking of the Titanic years before it happened. Yeah,
and I think, even if it turns out one day that we learn that, it really was a big coincidence. Well, for me, that is just as fascinating. It's kind of one of these too good to be true coincidences that actually turns out to be true. I'd be quite satisfied if that, is the result of it all.
Well, what's your opinion? Flatwood's extraterrestrial encounter or some kind of terrestrial misunderstanding?
Well, I without sounding like someone who's sitting on the fence, which I'm honestly not, I genuinely don't know, because I think the people who are out there, there's no doubt in my mind they saw something that fitted the description of what they said it looked like. And, of course, this was a decade and a half or thereabouts before Mothman surfaced. And, there are some parallels with the Mothman issue as well. But in saying that, I still cannot get away from the fact that even if Maskelyne had exaggerated, or there was more to it or less to it, there's still that fact that there are so many issues that pop up in the UFO angle versus the British Army angle. So right now, I'm willing to sort of go either way with the story, because I don't think there's enough data to say definitively it's this or it's that. But I mean, the interesting thing is the document that Gene Hungerford put together for Rand. It wasn't just sent to the Air Force. It wasn't just put together for the Air Force as a complete body, so to speak. The document, the Rand document, was actually prepared for U.S. Air Force psychological warfare experts. It was that specific department, if you like, or that particular arm of the Air Force that handles psychological warfare and stuff like that. So, just the fact that we know that at times the UFO subject has been used, under psychological warfare and disinformation, again, that makes me wonder, is there a connection there as well? The very fact that this bizarre story about Maskelyne and this scarecrow and with the glowing eyes, that story reached U.S. Air Force psychological warfare experts.
I think the one thing we need to point out here is there's nothing wrong with being on straddling the fence if you don't really know an answer and you don't have the data to make a good prediction of it. And the second thing is, and the second thing is, you've mentioned the Mothman a couple of times. Give us a background to the Mothman. What was the Mothman?
Well, the Mothman, for people who don't know, and I'm sure nearly all of your listeners know of Mothman, but I mean, the first thing I always think when people mention Mothman, it sounds like some sort of cheesy superhero in like a comic book or something, But it actually was not described like that. It was more of sort of a shadowy wraith kind of creature with these bat-like wings and these illuminated red fiery eyes. And the sightings began in the latter part of 1966 through the end of 1967 in the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Now, in the same way that, you've got this very odd crossover between Loch Ness and UFOs, as we mentioned earlier, well, in Point Pleasant, people initially were seeing this creature and were assuming that it was just some sort of giant bird or some sort of strange flying creature. And initially, it wasn't tied, for the first few weeks, it wasn't tied to the UFO subject at all. But what happened was that as the days and weeks went on, at the same time, and in some cases in the same places where the Mothman was seen, people were also having alien encounters. And it wasn't too far away, as the crow flies, from where you have the very controversial Indrid Cold story, like a very sinister and weird contactee encounter involving a guy named Woody Derenberger. And you also had around Point Pleasant, particularly in '67, was a wave of claimed encounters with the Men in Black. people who'd seen the Mothman were being visited and threatened and silenced by the men in black. And typically they weren't sort of government people. They were the sort of classic, pale, skinny, weird-looking men in black that really kind of came to the fore in the 60s and the 70s. So again, you've got this kind of crossover between a bizarre creature that may have been alien seen in and around a town that had a huge wave of UFO activity and encounters with the men in black.
Well, the Mothman, though, sightings, it wasn't just like a single sighting. There were a number of reports not only of the UFOs, but of the Mothman as well, unlike Flatwoods, where you have basically the one group there seeing the creature. And then another story that came out a couple of days later about somebody else involved in it. But in Mothman, you've got many, many witnesses.
Oh, yeah, there were dozens and dozens of them. And even the local police, they opened files and, interviewed people. And it became sort of a major state of activity in town. Now, it all sort of culminated in December 1967 when the town's Silver Bridge crashed into the Ohio River. Now, what you've got the Ohio River, which is this huge, wide river, and on the one side you've got West Virginia, on the other side you've got Ohio. And what happened was that one night, just a few days before Christmas, as people were going home from work, it was just after 5 o'clock, and the bridge collapsed into the river, killing dozens of people. And a lot of people around town at that time actually thought there was a connection between the presence of Mothman and the collapse of the bridge, as if, the creature was some sort of Grim Reaper type character. And the story's an interesting one because the encounters predominantly came to a grinding halt not long after the bridge collapsed. Now, of course, there's a down-to-earth explanation that it was basically fatigue in the bridge itself which caused the collapse to occur. So, it's one of these stories that's become legendary, and particularly so, with the potential connection, if you like, with the bridge.
Well, I'm going to have to interrupt you one more time because we're going to have to take our last break here. I'm sitting here with Nick Redfern. We're talking about his book, The Alien Book, A Guide to Extraterrestrials Beings on Earth. My book's Roswell in the 21st Century and Encounter in the Desert, which deals with the Socorro sighting. The blog is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And as I say, I'll have more information on the blog up in the next couple of days, and including a link to that paper. We will be back right after this, so stick around.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hides can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Did you expect your business to flourish, but instead it plateaued or didn't get off the ground yet? Would you like to achieve massive goals and discover new sources of income within your business? When you're ready to experience that type of success with fast results, Cindy Hendricks is the business coach for you. Her work with entrepreneurs and business owners has been life-changing. To get you and your business where you want to be, go to imaginemoresuccess.com.
Has the fear of public speaking stalled your business or personal life? What would you give to develop and maintain supreme confidence? Have an invaluable private program to always perform at your best. Imagine how you would feel. You can have all that and so much more today with Thomas Hides' life-changing course called Number One Fear Unleashed. Visit numberonefear.com and be liberated from your fear of public speaking.
As I have said repeatedly, I am here with Nick Redfern, author of many, many books on UFOs. In fact, I think he's attempting to take the record away from Brad Steiger and me as being the most prolific author on UFO books. And he's got a good run at it because he's a lot younger than I am, and he's got a lot more UFO books than I had at his age. So he may win the title eventually. And congratulations on that, but it's premature, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can actually reach Brad. I mean, Brad, I think, when his final book was like something like he's 178th or something like that.
But they weren't all UFO books is the point. It's UFO books specifically. So there you go. We've kind of talked around all of this, and I noticed in the book you talked about cryptoterrestrials. And I think that's Mac Tony's idea of what is visiting us. Tell us a little bit about the cryptoterrestrials.
Yeah, well, Mac's theory wasn't anything new as such, but he did sort of expand it to, for a new generation. He kind of kick-started it for like the 21st century. His book, The Cryptoterrestrials, came out in, I think it was 2010. And basically, his theory was because, with things like alien abductions, where people talk about DNA, cells, egg, sperm being taken and things like this, Mac had sort of deep. Shall we say he wasn't someone who was a non-believer when it came to alien abductions, but he was someone who felt that it was almost too good to be true that our cells, DNA, etc., was compatible with them. And he also felt, the very fact that most aliens are seen not wearing spacesuits or something like that, he felt that that was too coincidental, that, they could sort of operate in our world totally comfortably, and that our DNA was compatible with them in terms of the abduction stories and so on.
Well, that's a point that's a point that has not been raised enough, and I've come across it a couple of times and mentioned it, that you've got these alien creatures coming down, and we now presume that they are able to match their DNA with ours if they in fact have DNA. So
well, that's right, yeah. And he also but he dug quite deeply into how some cases he felt were specifically staged to, if you like, encourage the ET meme. And by that, I mean, he said that he felt a lot of these stories in the 50s of like aliens being seen at the side of the road taking soil samples and plant samples. He felt the fact that so many of those kind of cases occurred that it wasn't random. He felt that people were being sort of placed into those situations to satisfy the ET believers that, yes, it's aliens. So, he had a lot of interesting ideas, but what his theory came down to was the idea that before us, there may have been one or more civilization that existed before ours, and that possibly they, degraded, died off, or possibly, there were pockets of them that still existed, and that to maneuver among us and to prevent us from knowing what they actually are, they, in a subtle or less than subtle way, try and promote the idea that they are aliens, rather than something that's coexisting with us on the planet. Now, it sounds admittedly like a cool sort of sci-fi movie, mixed in with a bit of kind of Richard Shaver, and the Hollow Earth thing. But, Mac did sort of, bring it up to, like I said, a modern day version, if you like, of the idea that, yes, UFOs are real, yes, the creatures are real, but they're from here, not from there.
But you're suggesting something that is hidden on our planet that we can come in communication with, as opposed to, I guess, the interdimensional creatures that other people talk about that sort of live in the same plane that we do, but they vibrate at a different frequency or something like that, so we are unable to perceive them. So he's suggesting something much more physical.
Oh, yeah. He was sort of, he was talking about sort of, the feasibilities of, underground facilities and things like that. And I should stress that he said he didn't feel, that there were millions of them, maneuvering among us, and possibly not even hundreds of thousands. He felt they were on an evolutionary decline. Maybe there's only sort of 10 or 20,000 of them left. And he felt that one of the other reasons why they were staging UFO events was to make them look far grander and far more technologically advanced than they might actually be. He even wondered on the possibility that if some of their craft might not be sort of, interplanetary or, interdimensional vehicles, he felt they could be sort of robust balloons even, that they were flying around in, which sounds really odd. But he actually, he made an intriguing case for the idea that, they're on an evolutionary wane and they don't particularly like us. They don't want to get involved with us because of our sort of warlike ways, and they do their best to prevent us from knowing what they really are, and they do so by subterfuge and as I said, staging things and making it look like something that they want it to look like when it's actually something else.
Well, you say they're on evolutionary decline. Are they Homo sapiens, precursors of Homo sapiens? Do they look like us, or would they look more like a Neanderthal, for example?
Yeah, that's a good point, because he said that there was one point in his life when he felt all the contactee stories were just garbage, but over time he came to believe that, you know, some of these long-haired space brothers may literally how they looked, and that they were, you know, early humans similar to us, but perhaps with a few slight differences. And he also sort of pondered on the idea of these weirder looking men in black, you know, actually being a part of this ancient race, if you like. And he also sort of speculated that the MIB, maybe their reason for threatening people was to prevent them from learning too much of the, you know, the origins of who they actually were. So, you know, his book was a good one. It's not a big book, because he died before it could be completely finished. But, I mean, there was enough material to put together his book. And, you know, as I said, it wasn't a new theory, but he definitely gave it a kickstart, you know, with new concepts and ideas, mirroring today's technology and things like that.
Well, I had noticed that it seemed that the descriptions of the alien creatures, we're going to have to do this quickly, sort of evolved, because when you looked at the stuff in the 40s and the 50s, you did get the creatures, when anybody reported them, wearing kind of spacesuits. There were a number of stories like that. And eventually it evolved to the idea where they were at home in our atmosphere and they didn't need the cumbersome breathing apparatus and that sort of thing. Did he address that at all, or have you addressed that at all?
I have in some cases in the book where I talk about, you know, you've got aliens where sometimes, you know, they are reported very occasionally, sort of like fishbowl helmets, you know, like something out of a low-budget 1950s sci-fi movie. But Mac did sort of cover that kind of angle quite a bit, you know, the idea of the clothing and the helmets and sometimes the lack of them. And he felt, you know, his main point was that he felt they were too comfortable living in our world, and there seemed to be too much going on that was like a stage play for the benefit of the witnesses. And his conclusion was that was being done to try and get across to the best of their ability to say, hey, we're aliens, we're from up there, and doing everything they could to actually prevent us from finding out that they're from down here.
Well, we're going to have to stop it there, I'm afraid, even though I've got another long list of questions to ask and talk to you about. But these things happen when we talk about aliens and all of that sort of thing. Your book is The Alien Book, A Guide to Extraterrestrial Beings on Earth. And you've got a couple of others out there, don't you?
Well, yeah, just coincidentally, another company put out one of my books, and it's called Flying Saucers from the Kremlin. And I'll get a copy of this sent to you, because it's basically, it's not about Russian UFO sightings. It's about how in the Cold War the Russians used like disinformation, psychological warfare as a means to try and manipulate and create hysteria in the US. And so there's a lot about how the FBI were watching watching the contactees and their claims of how some of the space brothers were allegedly communists, which sounds really weird, you know. But I'll send you a copy of the book, because I've got quite a bit in the book about how certain arms of U.S. intelligence pondered on the idea that the MJ-12 documents were the creations of the KGB.
Well, I'll look forward to that in the mail. Easy for me to say, I suppose. Thank you very much, Nick. Appreciate your time here.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
I will put more information up on my blog at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And as I say, you know, I am surprised, appalled, I guess, that more people aren't looking at Roswell in the 21st century, because I think it gives you a really good feel for what happened at Roswell and an idea of what was going on at that time. Next week, I'm going to be joined by Paul Davids, who is the executive producer of the Showtime original movie Roswell and a lot of other stuff, and we'll be talking about what how he's involved in UFOs and how he got started with his research and what he has found during his time. And I will be back, as I say, with him next week on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and a different perspective. So put a note on your calendar and search us out. Thank you for listening.